The first time the HOA told me what I was allowed to do on my own 500 acres of timber land, I honestly thought it was a joke. I remember standing there holding the letter, reading it twice, then a third time, trying to understand how a group of suburban homeowners believed they had authority over land that had been in my family longer than their entire neighborhood even existed. What I didn't know at that moment was that one meeting, just one, would end with half their board losing their seats, and the entire community learning a lesson they wouldn't forget. Before we get into it, if you enjoy real stories about HOA drama, entitled neighbors, and satisfying karma moments, make sure you like the video and subscribe to Karen's Stories Daily. It really helps the channel grow, and you won't miss the next story because this one builds slowly and then hits hard. So here's the background. My grandfather bought that timber land in the late 1970s. 500 acres of mixed pine and hardwood, rolling hills, dirt roads, and a small hunting cabin near the creek. It wasn't luxury property. It was working land. We harvested timber responsibly every few years, maintained fire breaks, and leased small sections seasonally to local hunters. It was quiet, private, and far from city life. About 8 years ago, a developer bought farmland bordering one side of our property and built a large planned community. Nice houses, paved streets, decorative entrances, and of course, an HOA. At first, everything was fine. The neighborhood stayed on their side, and I stayed on mine. The new board members took over. The problems started small. One afternoon, I found bright orange survey flags placed along my access road. I assumed it was a mistake until I received a letter saying my logging trucks were damaging the aesthetic experience of the community entrance road. The funny part was that the road existed decades before their neighborhood. I called the number listed just to clear things up. The woman who answered introduced herself as Denise, HOA president. Her tone wasn't rude at first, just overly confident. She explained they were updating community standards and expected surrounding properties to cooperate. I calmly told her my land wasn't part of their HOA. She paused, then said, "Well, it affects our residents." That sentence told me exactly where this was going. A week later, another letter arrived. This one demanded I limit timber harvesting hours and install visual barriers, so residents wouldn't see logging equipment from their walking trail. I actually laughed out loud reading it. They were asking me to change operations on hundreds of acres because someone didn't like seeing trucks in the distance. I ignored it, assuming reality would eventually set in. Instead, they escalated. Residents began stopping near my gate, taking pictures, sometimes even walking onto my land thinking it was public green space. One couple told me the HOA newsletter described my property as future recreational expansion. That was news to me. So I attended my first HOA meeting. I walked into a clubhouse filled with maybe 40 residents. Conversations stopped when I introduced myself as the owner of the timber land. Denise smiled politely but looked irritated. I showed up. She began explaining complaints about noise, dust, and industrial activity. I let her finish, then calmly placed county maps and property records on the table showing clear boundaries and agricultural zoning protections. You could feel the room shift. Some residents looked surprised, others looked embarrassed. Denise quickly changed tone and said they only wanted cooperation. I agreed to basic courtesy, notifying them before large harvest operations, but made it clear they had zero authority over my land. That should have ended it. It didn't. Over the next few months, HOA emails started warning residents about safety risks near my property. Someone installed unofficial signs near my fence saying private area, HOA restricted access. That crossed a line. I contacted the county office, and they confirmed the HOA had no jurisdiction outside their development. They even sounded annoyed when I explained what was happening. Then came the meeting that changed everything. I received a certified letter stating the HOA planned to vote on legal action against me for reducing property values. That was when I hired an attorney, not to fight, but to make sure facts stayed clear. The meeting was packed. Word spread fast. Residents expected a confrontation. Denise opened with a long presentation showing photos of logging trucks, piles of timber, even early morning fog she claimed looked like smoke. She argued my land should follow community environmental standards. When she finished, my attorney quietly asked one question: "Can you show where the HOA has authority beyond its recorded boundaries?" Silence. She tried redirecting the conversation, but several residents started asking questions. One man asked why HOA funds were being used for a dispute outside their jurisdiction. Another asked how much legal consultation had already cost. The number shocked everyone. Thousands of dollars spent chasing a case they couldn't legally win. My attorney then explained agricultural right to farm protections and long-standing property rights, calmly, no drama. Just facts. The mood completely flipped. Residents realized their dues were funding a personal fight instead of community improvements. People started speaking up about other decisions the board had made without transparency. Denise looked stunned. As support slipped away in real time. By the end of the meeting, a motion was raised to review board conduct. I didn't push for it. I didn't even speak again. The residents handled it themselves. Within 2 weeks, a special vote removed multiple board members, including Denise. After that, something unexpected happened. The new board reached out and apologized officially, not just privately, publicly in their newsletter. They clarified my land was independent and reminded residents to respect property boundaries. Almost overnight, the tension disappeared. Neighbors who once complained started waving when they drove past. Some even asked about sustainable forestry because they were curious how timberland actually works. Turns out most people never had a problem. They were just following what leadership told them. The biggest surprise came months later when the HOA invited me to speak at a community event about wildfire prevention and land management. Standing there explaining controlled harvesting and fire breaks to families who once saw me as a problem felt surreal. Looking back, I realized the conflict was never really about trees or trucks. It was about control. A small group believed authority extended further than it actually did, and nobody questioned it until facts were placed calmly in front of them. If I had reacted emotionally, argued loudly, or threatened back, the story would have turned into neighbor versus neighbor. Instead, patience let the truth do the work. These days, the timberland is exactly what it's always been: quiet, working, and peaceful. The same dirt roads my grandfather walked still run through the trees. The difference now is mutual respect. And honestly, the meeting they thought would force me to comply ended up costing them their own seats. If you made it this far, I want to hear from you. What would you have done if an HOA tried to control land you legally owned? Would you ignore it or fight back immediately? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I read a lot of them here on Karen Stories Daily. And your stories sometimes inspire future videos. If this story kept you listening, share it with someone who loves real HOA drama. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Some HOA stories end quietly, and some end with an entire board learning a very expensive lesson. A few months after that meeting, life settled into something that finally felt normal again. Login schedules continued, trucks came and went, and the new HOA board stayed respectful. For a while, I thought the whole situation had simply burned itself out. But what I didn't realize was how much damage the old board had quietly caused behind the scenes, and how long it would take to fully undo it. One morning, I received a call from a timber contractor asking why access permits had suddenly been questioned by residents near the shared road. Apparently, a few homeowners still believed my land was going to be turned into a housing expansion because that rumor had circulated for nearly a year under the previous board. Even though leadership changed, misinformation tends to stick around longer than facts. So instead of getting frustrated, I decided to do something different. I invited the new HOA president and a few residents to walk part of the property with me. We drove slowly along the main trail, stopping near areas where selective harvesting had taken place. I explained how trees are rotated, why clearing sections actually helps forest health, and how fire breaks protect nearby homes during dry seasons. You could literally see perspectives changing in real time. One resident admitted she thought logging meant destroying forest permanently. Another said the old board described my land as unused space. Hearing that honestly surprised me, but it also explained why tensions grew so quickly before. After that visit, the HOA published a long clarification explaining the history of the land and how forestry operations worked. That single newsletter probably solved more problems than months of arguments ever could. Still, there was one final situation that almost brought everything back. Late one afternoon, I noticed surveyors near the edge of my southern boundary, not county workers, but a private company. When I approached them, they explained they were hired months earlier by the previous HOA board to explore a possible trail extension. The paperwork had finally reached processing even though the board members who ordered it were already gone. That moment could have turned ugly fast. Instead of accusing anyone, I contacted the new HOA leadership immediately. They were just as surprised as I was. Within days, they canceled the contract and issued refunds where possible. The president personally came out to apologize, saying they were still uncovering decisions made without proper approval. That's when it hit me. Most conflicts don't end instantly. Even after leadership changes, old decisions keep echoing forward for a while. Over the next year, something unexpected happened. The relationship between my property and the neighborhood actually became cooperative. During wildfire season, we coordinated clearing schedules so smoke wouldn't drift toward homes unnecessarily. Residents reported fallen trees near shared boundaries, and I helped maintain safer access roads that emergency vehicles could use if needed. The same land once labeled a problem slowly became seen as protection for the community. One evening during a neighborhood barbecue, yes, they eventually invited me, a resident joked, the meeting that was supposed to stop you saved this HOA instead. People laughed, but there was truth behind it. The situation forced residents to pay attention to how decisions were made and where authority actually ended. I ran into Denise once after all of this. Months later at a hardware store. The conversation was brief and honestly a little awkward. She admitted things got out of control faster than she expected. I didn't hold a grudge. Leadership pressure and assumptions can push people into bad decisions. We shook hands, and that was it. Standing in line afterward, I realized something important. The entire conflict could have been avoided if someone had simply checked property records before making demands. One small step at the beginning would have prevented months of stress for everyone involved. Now, when I walk through the timberland early in the morning, nothing feels tense anymore. Just wind through the trees, gravel under my boots, and the sound of work being done the way it always has been. The houses nearby blend into the distance instead of feeling like opposition. And honestly, the biggest lesson wasn't about winning an argument. It was about staying calm long enough for facts to catch up with emotion. People eventually recognize fairness when it's presented clearly and without anger. The HOA still holds meetings, but now they double-check boundaries before discussing anything related to surrounding land. From what I've heard, new residents are even told the story as an example of why transparency matters. So the land stayed mine, the trees kept growing, and the meeting meant to control me ended up reshaping an entire community instead. If you've ever dealt with an HOA or authority pushing beyond its limits, I'd really like to hear your experience. Drop your story in the comments. I read them here on Karen Stories Daily. And some of the best future stories come directly from you. And if this story kept you listening all the way through, share it with someone who loves satisfying real-life drama. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because the next story might start with a simple complaint and end with consequences nobody saw coming.